After the explosion at the Al-Ali Arabi Baptist Hospital in Gaza City on the evening of October 17, in which at least 471 people were killed, Hamas and Israel provided two opposing reconstructions of what happened. Shortly before 7 p.m. on October 17, the Al-Ali Arabi Baptist Hospital in Gaza City was hit by a violent explosion that caused the death of over 400 people according to data from the Palestinian Ministry of Health. Among them, there were also many children. Hamas immediately accused Israel of having bombed the health facility. The United States bears responsibility for the hospital attack because of its coverage of Israeli aggression, Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh also told to Al Jazeera. Haniyeh then appealed to Palestinians in the occupied territories to rise up against the Israeli occupation. But Israel denied everything, in turn pointing the finger at a failed explosion of a rocket launched by Islamic Jihad. On the morning of October 18, it released some aerial images of before and after the failed launch, which would show that there were no Israeli jets over the hospital facility. For Israel, as underlined by the Israeli military spokesman, Daniel Hagari, in a press conference, the explosion was caused by a defective rocket launched yesterday at 7 p.m. by Islamic Jihad from a nearby cemetery. The spokesperson also adds audio evidence of a conversation between Hamas men which would confirm the launch of a faulty rocket.
بس بقول لك أول مرة بنشوف الصاروخ زي هيك والشظايا هذه فبقول لك تبع الجهاد الصواريخ الجهاد الإسلامي يعني. إيه؟ فهم بيقولوا تعاون الجهاد الإسلامي. إنه من عندنا هذا؟ شكله من عندنا مين اللي بيقول هيك؟ بيحكوا إن الشظايا تبعت الصاروخ إنه الشظايا محلية مش زي شظايا إيش بتقول؟ سبحان الله من عندنا ما لقاش غيرين بجرثومي. عاد هذول تلاقيهم من المقبرة الورا دي بفلت محط فيهم. ايش ده؟ بتلاقيهم طالعين من المقبرة الورا المستشفى المعمداني دي اللي هو فسه ونزل عندهم. هو في مقبرة وراه؟ المعمداني ولك عند الساحة بالضبط. هي وين لما تدخل على الساحة؟ أول ما تدخل على الساحة تدخلش على البلد عيدك اليمين في مستشفى المعمداني. عرفتها.
Since the beginning of the conflict, he specified, 450 defective Palestinian rockets have exploded inside the strip. The hospital building was not hit, but damage was detected in the external car park, where there were signs of a fire, the Israeli military spokesman further stated. And he then added, no craters or damage to the surrounding buildings can be seen, as would be expected in the case of an air attack. The PLO, Palestine Liberation Organization, has made a new appeal to the international community asking to put an end to this massacre. Egypt condemned the Israeli bombing in the strongest terms. Jordan made it known that it considered the Jewish state responsible for these dangerous developments, the Iranian government with a statement calling on Islamic countries to oppose the false regime and put an end to its endless cruelty and killings of innocent Muslims, and to expel Israel's ambassadors in their states. While President Joe Biden, who left for Israel yesterday, said he was indignant. Then, in the morning, he said, it seems that the explosion was made on the other side. The circumstances of this catastrophe and the responsibilities remain unclear and will have to be thoroughly investigated, but the outcome is very clear. It is a terrible tragedy for those who were involved, said the United Nations Special Coordinator on the Peace Process in Middle East. On the other hand, Brazil proposes the draft resolution to the UN, asking for humanitarian pauses in the conflict between Israel and Hamas to allow humanitarian aid access to the Gaza Strip. The proposal received 12 votes in favor, 2 abstentions by Russia and Great Britain, and rejection by the United States. President Joe Biden's trip to the region is a clear demonstration that the U.S. is committed at the highest level to the conflict between Israel and Hamas to achieve the release of the hostages, to prevent the conflict from spreading and to reiterate the need to protect the civilians, said Linda Thomas Greenfield, Washington's ambassador to the United Nations. Beyond what happened at the UN, the negotiations and discussion on humanitarian aid to the Palestinians were at the center of the confrontation between President Biden and his Israeli counterpart Netanyahu, and led to the release of humanitarian aid for Gaza, the most as soon as possible, as stated by the leader of the White House. who compared the Hamas attack on October 7 to the attacks of September 11. However, warning Tel Aviv not to make the same mistakes made by the USA after 2001, when anger over the incident influenced Washington's strategies. If on the one hand we saw justice and obtained it, on the other we made mistakes. Many Americans were consumed with anger over what had happened, Biden recalled. Justice must be done, but don't let this anger consume you, he said, underlining that choices are never easy and there is always a price to pay because they require an honest evaluation. Then he specified that the majority of Palestinians are not Hamas and that even the loss of Palestinian lives matters, renewing the call for moderation and a proportionate response already forwarded to Netanyahu in recent days. In light of the American president's request, Israel will not impede humanitarian supplies from Egypt, as long as they are only food, water and medicine for the civilian population in the southern Gaza Strip or moving there, and as long as these supplies do not reach Hamas. Any supplies reaching Hamas will be hindered, Netanyahu's office further highlighted. Biden also announced $100 million in U.S. funds for humanitarian assistance in Gaza and the West Bank, which will support over 1 million people displaced by the conflict, including emergency needs in Gaza.